Welcome to Remember Me by Intervivos, the show about living life to its fullest, leaving a legacy, and deciding how you will be remembered. And now, your humble team of expert planners taking the legal world by storm.
All right, welcome to Remember Me. We're here interviewing somebody really special that I'm excited to get into a conversation with, Missy Larsen. And as we share your story, Missy, one of the things that I'm really interested in is just that you've lived a life that, in my opinion, is really driven by, passions.
Yeah.
And what you want to do in terms of good in the world and leaving a legacy of values.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we always try to focus on as part of our show is leaving a legacy, what's important to you and how will you be remembered. And I think that's something that from when you were very little, that was part of your life.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about growing up. Where did you grow up? I understand that you had a father who was in politics.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that influence your childhood?
I had really the best of both worlds when I was growing up. Salt Lake City was such a great time at the time that I was growing up. It was there. I was born in the very late 1960s, and so the 1970s and the 1980s in Salt Lake was just a magical time. I lived on the avenues as a teenager. My dad actually was elected mayor of Salt Lake as the youngest elected mayor at the age of 35. My mom was only 30 years old, and I laugh at that at the time, now that I look back on that and think, wow, what an experience to jump into politics that way. But I was only 5 years old at the time that he went in, and so he was mayor from the time I was 5 until I was 15.
Wow.
And what that does is that kind of opens up the layers of connectivity with people around you. You're able to see not only how a city works, but how dynamically individuals work together in community to really make changes, to find solutions. Amazingly, my dad was the mayor when the big river came down State Street. And if you look back at old photos in 1983, and it was an incredible experience for me to see as a young teenager, to see not only the street workers and the people that are in it, and I mean in the way of utilities and people out there putting sandbags, but there was a call for action from all of the community. And even within the church setting, you had Spencer Kimball, who went across and said, hey, we need people here filling sandbags on a Sunday. And that was kind of unheard of at the time, right? The Sabbath is the day of rest. And you had all of these people out there filling sandbags, which turned State Street into a river. And it was remarkable to see my dad in the middle of that and to be able to connect to that in ways that were true, practical solutions, and bringing community together for solutions. And that taught me very, very young to look to people as solutions, not to look to systems, which you do need systems, but not to look to overlying all of the things sometimes we mess everything up with, but that really truly, when it comes down to it, you get a room of good people and you can solve almost anything. And
seeing the community rally around each other.
Yes.
in that sort of setting.
Yes.
That's incredible. So where do you fall in line with your siblings?
I'm third. So I'm smack in the middle, and I've got a brother and a sister older and a brother and a sister younger.
Okay.
And we have big gaps in our family. So my brother is 6 years older than me, and then a year and a half later, Jenny came, and then 3.5 years later, me, and then another 6 years until my younger sibling, and then another 5 years until our youngest brother came along. Amazingly, I had grandparents right next to us in our neighborhood, and also very, very close cousins that were nearby. So we had a very tight community of family through my mother's side. And not only that, I grew up in this great neighborhood on the North Hills that had a reservoir that was open for kids that we would roller skate on and use as the park. We had the hills behind us. I mean, I look now where, most of the kids have their heads in the digital world, and I can't imagine being young and having that when the world was really our we explored the lime kilns and the hills and the gullies and the old cars that were at the bottom of the gullies that were shot out, and the things that you get from the land, and even being that close to the city. I mean, I remember riding the bus to Lagoon when I was 8 years old with a cousin and forgetting to get off and going all the way to Ogden. But these experiences were much safer than they are now. I would never allow my child at 8 years old to ride
and things have
the
changed
bus.
so much in terms of just the layout also of the valley.
And the population bases are, I mean, there's so many more people. It's harder to get around. It's a scarier time. We know about everything that goes wrong. Now, whether there are a lot more things or not, we don't know that, because now we know everything, right? As quickly as we can on things that are coming up on our phone all day long. So it was just a very freeing time, I feel like, and I had a lot of freedom to explore and to see the world and to feel it with my friends and to be out and explore it. So I really, really feel like not only did I have that freedom, but then I had these incredible experiences that my dad was bringing into my life. At 8 years old, I went with him to the Mayor's Conference in Denver, Colorado. And this was a new world, and here I was with all of these people. I had no idea who they were. I met at dinner, there's wine around the table. That had never been at our dinner table, so it wasn't something I was used to. And, the smoking and the whole thing. And I remember sitting there and thinking, wow, this is what the rest of the world does, when we're home going to church. This is what's going on in the world. And at 8 years old, my dad looked out the window and he said, "Hey, Gary, do you think you could go with Missy tomorrow morning for a few hours? I think I'm going to go run the Denver Marathon." And so he throws me to somebody I don't know to go watch the marathoners come in. And he came in, he ran his best marathon that day.
Wow.
It was a few months after he had been training earlier for the Deseret News and was in a marathon mode. And it was his fastest marathon. And there I was hanging out with a guy from Rhode Island who was, living back in DC. That man became one of my closest friends throughout life.
Interesting.
And those experiences were the experiences where I was able to see an outside world living in a very contained and safe environment. So I had the best of both worlds. My dad was friends with Robert Redford, so we would spend, New Year's Eve and the 24th of July at his house, and the stars would come in, and Goldie Hawn would be there with her jean jacket, and Jane Fonda. Those were the big stars at that time, and that was just part of my reality at that age. I don't remember it seeming awkward or strange. I remember feeling, very free to be who I was, but I didn't recognize that it was very different than the experience that my friends were having. Yeah.
That's interesting. So do you feel like as you've grown and you've seen the world evolve in terms of development and just, the state in where things are at and how things are handled and everything else, do you feel like your life has been colored by those memories?
Oh, certainly. And I think it's also, the more I've gotten to know my heritage, I think there's something in all of us. I don't think this is me. I think the human experience, we come with these incredible makeups and these DNA makeups and our experiences that we have as children, and we come into these life experiences and we're born with geniuses. I think we all are born with geniuses. I wasn't the most incredible student. I mean, all my friends were doing AP classes and I was having a lot of fun and doing fine in school, but I didn't think I really had a brain till I got to the University of Utah and took a class from J.D. Williams, The Beauty of Freedom. That was such an enlightening class. All of a sudden I was hearing about Dostoevsky and all of these containments of the human spirit. And then halfway through the quarter, J.D. would teach a class about the Constitution. And he would cry about the beauty of the freedom that we enjoy. And that connected with me because I had felt that freedom. I knew what that was, and I knew that I had the innate ability to make decisions for myself and to have that freedom of philosophy. And to be American was so much, I didn't quite understand it until that class, how critical it was. And that started to build in me a little bit different of a political perspective maybe than what I had lived earlier in, trying to figure out what's Democrat, what's Republican, what are these political parties? Because I was known as the Democrat family. I mean, the Wilsons were the Democrats. And then when I came out and ran in 2012 as a Republican, everybody thought I was a big sellout. And I wanted to say, wait a minute, you don't even know who I was before then. You knew who my dad is. It's a moderate negotiator. You know who my sister is, who chooses to be very progressive into spaces, but you don't know who I am. So I wasn't a sellout. I am who I am, but my parents really, really gave me that platform to be who I am. And I really thank both of them for that. They're both very strong individuals, and in their own right. My dad's a mountain rescuer and a politician, and my mom's an artist and a philosopher, and that melds in young people and as you grow, and I, more than anything, they gave me that freedom to be me. And I think that's hard. I think it's hard for parents to really allow their kids to be themselves. I've got 5 siblings, and people will say to me, I don't get it. You guys are all so different, yet you get along. You're all effective in what you do. You're not all political, but you're doing good things in the world. I've got a PhD brother in electrical engineering, an attorney brother who is in digital security, a sister who is a great mom, an artist in Los Angeles and is there living, and then my sister now who's the newly elected mayor of Salt Lake County. And we all are doing great things in our own spheres. We're all philosophically completely different. I have one brother who chooses to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He and I are the only ones who have chosen religion. Everybody else in my family has not. Yet somehow that connectivity of just pure family love connects. And we're able to be that community basis for each other and let all of those differences just go. And the incredible thing with that is that's our parents. That's the ability. Somebody said, my mom used to have a chart because she was an artist and she would stay up very late working. And she had a chart on the refrigerator when we were young that you got a star if you did not wake up mom. So we would get ourselves up. We would get ourselves to school. And if I didn't get to school, it was my own fault. So I became a responsible being very early because I'm a pleaser, right? I liked my teachers. I didn't want to be the girl that didn't go to school.
Right.
So even if I had to walk to school, I would get myself to school. But it built in me this I knew I could do things.
A sense of independence.
Yeah. I knew that if it needed to get done, I could get it done. And that's with all of my siblings. Jenny laughed one day and said, Mom, you never made breakfast for us. And my mom returned, I put the cereal within reach.
That's right.
But that was our experience. And it was really, she was a great artist. She was a business owner, an incredible woman. And especially in those times when a lot of women were choosing not to do things outside the home, she chose to. So that, gave me kind of a platform to say, whatever it is that I feel in my heart, that my relationship with, my source, and that to me is God, how that is my most important guidance. And so that's what's really guided me. But they've given me that platform to be able to attach to that.
It's a fun mix of different influences, the artistic side and the political side. And
yeah, it's given me a lot of spaces. So when, refugee, and all of my experiences, it's been very fascinating. I couldn't have foreseen most of the experiences in my life that have been the most challenging and the most enlightening. There's no way I could have seen them, but I've been in incredible places to see. I started the PR firm, the Intrepid Group, and we did the PR for Elizabeth Smart and her family while she was gone. And to be there through that whole process, not only was it the neighborhood that I grew up in, so I knew the people that were mourning and that were looking and searching and seeking, and then the people that were celebrating with her. And I was there right at the police, when we brought in William, her younger brother, when they first saw eyes on each other. And to be part of that and to see the miracle of her return and to see what an amazing woman she is and to see what she has done to build community and to connect with those who need her. It's been incredible to watch that. And then a few years later, it was actually the day she was found, I turned off my phone, changed my phone number, told my partners I was selling my part of my PR firm because I was 8 months pregnant with my fourth, and I was exhausted and I needed to go home and be a mom. And I did that, and then I started freelance slowly. And then, interestingly, the next project that I would have never, ever put myself in the middle of was actually a youth conference that we did called Army of Angels. And that was, I was given a piece of paper that had a name of a Somali Bantu family on it and an address. And I said, what am I supposed to do with this? And the organizer said, well, you'll take that and you'll go help that family with the 7 kids that are assigned to you with part of this youth conference. And I said, well, how do I know they're home? And she said, oh, they're always home. So we pulled up in our pretty new car, and all these Bantu children come running out, who sent you? Who sent you? And the mom's walking out with an empty gas can to just eke a few little drops of gas into her car. And I looked at my husband and I said, oh, go fill up her car. I mean, it was just a natural, and then we spend the weekend with them and I fall in love with these kids. And when it's time to go home, I can't go home. I've just met a need that there are true needs here. And the boy had just been suspended from school for taking a knife there. Well, he had lived in the camps until he was 9. And the Bantu story is heart-wrenching. They were the slaves to the Somalians. And when Islam came down through the region, they joined Islam just so that, because the Muslims can't enslave other Muslims. So they thought they would be free of slavery. Well, as soon as they freed themselves of slavery, the Somalians started killing the Bantu because they had no need for them. So they went to the refugee camps, and in the camps, there they were being killed again. And then the Somali War breaks out. And so it just populates with Somalians. So they're pushed, it's a 1 million person camp, and they're pushed to the outer limits. And the UN finally says, we have to get these people out of here or they will all be killed. So in 2006, they pick up the Bantu, and the US brings them all in in those years. And there were 16,000 of them at the time. Well, this was one of those Bantu families. This was one of those boys. And I started going to his appointments with him and getting to know him. Well, now he got him, we got him through high school. It was 4 different high schools, and I would go to all of his school things with him, and I would go to his mom didn't speak English, and his dad was working, and they then kept having more children because at that point they were really embracing Islam. So, no birth control, so more babies coming, and I kept saying to them, no more babies. And the mom, very little English, would say, I named Missy. And I said, you told me that last time, stop having babies. But we found each other in humor. We found each other in teasing each other. We found each other in this very human existence of just being able to connect through heart.
Was that the first time that you had connected with that community? Yeah,
very, very first. And now, 12 years later, I'm very close with the family.
It's been a big part of.
Yeah, and have been through, tons of different things with them. And they're part of my fiber now. And I would have never known anybody from Somalia. That was just because, there was an assignment that then led to a heart experience where there was no way I could turn around. And then that led to me seeing that me growing up in Salt Lake, knowing everything that I knew about Salt Lake, I was running into roadblocks for trying to figure out how to support what they were doing. So I went to Palmer DePaulis at the time, who was running the Division of Community and Culture. And I said, Palmer, how can I help? And Palmer, again, this connectivity, he was my dad's deputy mayor. And he had taken over when my dad left about a year early and went to the Hinckley Institute of Politics to direct that. And so Palmer and I had a close relationship. And so I could just be very upfront and honest and say, they are running into all sorts of roadblocks. And just the year before, Governor Huntsman and Mayor Caroon had put out a gap analysis, and what they got back was 50 pages of single lines of all of the gaps in services for refugees living in Utah. And so Palmer just said to me, I need you on my strategic committee. I need you to come to these board meetings that we have, and I need you to form a nonprofit organization. And I looked at him and I said, okay, and I'm sitting there. I had started a business, but I hadn't started a nonprofit. And I said, okay. And he goes, but I have somebody you can start it with. So 2 weeks into meeting Lou Miller, we formed the Utah Refugee Coalition, which is now the Utah Refugee Connection. And we've continued to morph that into spaces to fill gaps. And it's fulfilling an amazing gap right now. But Lou and I were the exact opposites, where he was a very meticulous, quiet attorney. I'm a loudmouth networker. And the two of us were able to really take our skill sets. I couldn't have done that. I mean, that's how I know there's a God, because I'm thinking, I couldn't have put the two of us together and seen a decade later how that would be the basis of something that would really support refugees in Utah long term. There's no way I could have done that. So I have found over my life, if I'm just willing to show up and fulfill what I can do, I'm very limited in my own capabilities. But if I'll connect with others and be open to whatever they have to contribute, you unleash the power of life.
It amplifies things.
And it amplifies it. And I say, wow, what a blessing to have been a part of this. And what a blessing to see that unfold in ways that I really got to see under the hood. I really got to see that do it. And so doTERRA, when that came along after my AG experience, and I had been involved in these big issues like human trafficking training and talking to different attorneys general across the US, when I saw doTERRA's co-impact sourcing model and able to see what they do on the ground around the world through economy and really changing the core of what people do for their own stability, the light went on. I said, what? That's it in full practice. I've been able to teach about it. I've been able to see it. I've been able to see it from the refugee stance. I've been able to see it from all of these spaces. But here's a company who is around the globe and actually changing communities. And so that was what drew me here to doTERRA. So it's been a really fascinating, I wouldn't have known, a year before I came here even, I didn't have a goal to be here. I didn't have a goal to be in the AG's office. I ran for office in 2012, really as kind of like a this is me thing. Here I am running as a Republican and I let my hair go white. It was like all in 2012, and I kind of was at the stage where my kids were at a stage where I could do that. The reason I ran for that seat, though, was not really self-driven. It was because the county was where the refugee services money was, and it was the social money that was there, and I felt like if I could get there, maybe I could really support the refugees through some of the work at the county. And so that's what drove that. When I lost that race, it didn't feel like, it was kind of like, well, you know what, that was a hard thing. The saddest thing to me about that race is that it was 100,000 registered voters. There's no way to get to that many people. And that type of race, you have no way to get messaging out. I ran on building community and tried to get people to understand that if you would just give your natural skill set in wherever you can get it, if you're older and retired scientist, go to the schools and teach science. Make it so the taxpayer doesn't have to pay for your lesson. Right. Whatever that is, just give where you can naturally give. And I tried to run on this, and my dad kept saying to me, you're not going to educate anybody in a campaign. And I said, I know, but at least I can feel good about it. I'm running it. So when I finished, and it was the most contested race that year with me and Sam Granado. Sam Granado had a big name, And he ended up winning that race. Well, it was a very short, less than a year later, that I entered the Attorney General's office with Sean Reyes, who was newly appointed after he had lost that previous race. So, and he and I really connected more at heart level than anything, where we said, okay, let's get in here and let's really make a difference in this job.
He's very much that type of person also.
Yeah, he is. And we kind of did this like, okay, Wonder Twins powers activate and let's go save the world. Now, after almost 4 years of that, I finally said, I got to go home. My kids need me. So it was, because that is a very intense position, very, very intense and very high burnout. And more than anything, I saw it where my kids were missing me. I needed to get home. And so that was my biggest push on. And then it was just naturally this incredible experience opened with doTERRA, which has been an incredible experience.
So tell us a little bit about what the work that doTERRA does, the influence that it's having abroad, globally. Why is that? Because you mentioned the model, but boots on the ground. How is that
layered? It is so layered. It is such an amazing company for a few reasons. One, the 7 owners are still together after 10 years, and they had a core mission when they started. And their core mission was to change the world, one drop, one person, one community at a time. And if you take that even by just those 3 things, if you're changing the world by one drop, then you're taking the oils. The oils themselves, I don't even know how to explain it unless people have tried them. It's not something that I can say to somebody. My dad, it was the best story of ever being here. He came down to campus, and he walked in and he looked at me and he goes, okay, I thought I was coming to doTERRA and I thought I'd come to a building. You've got a campus here. And I said, uh-huh. And he looked at me and he goes, oils? And I said, yeah, Dad, oils.
But there's a lot of people that are very passionate about their oils.
And there's a reason.
As consumers.
Yes.
Because, it makes such a difference for them.
Yep.
And they use it on a daily basis.
Exactly.
They become very evangelical about it.
They do become very evangelical about it. But the incredible basis of that is people have found a natural response to some of the things that they weren't able to solve with medicine, or they weren't able to solve in different ways. And so they found something that is really beneficial to their lives. And I know for 5 years prior to coming here, I would purchase the product. I've never sold it. Actually, 80% of doTERRA customers are like me. They buy it for themselves or family and don't sell. So although it does have the direct sales, the model, there's, again, 80% of our customer base are actually customers that just buy it for themselves. So you've got both ways that happen there. So it's a very open way of purchase. And so, but now, I couldn't live without peppermint. I couldn't live without these simple things that seem so simple, yet they just offer something to life that wasn't there before. And
it's created a movement that before this industry, the industry didn't exist.
Nope.
If you go back, a couple dozen years ago.
No. And now the most incredible thing about doTERRA with that oil is that we have these clinics coming on, Prime Meridian clinics, and that are doctor-driven clinics that will have access to not only oils. They're not going to be salesmen, so they're not selling oils, but they will have access to oils to be able to use them, or if you need a blood test, or you need pharmaceuticals, or you need whatever you need, they have, because they are MDs or DOs, or they're licensed practitioners. So they will be seeing you. It's a different model. It's a totally different model. So we will completely, change the way people look at healthcare, because it's a subscription base. And so you come in, you meet with your doctor for half an hour or an hour, however long you need, and really talk about the holistic healing. How do you get ahead of crisis? Because we, as a healthcare market, have been crisis driven. So doTERRA is looking at this in a way of, how do we get ahead of this? How do we solve the problems and be more preventative and more integrative, and how do we do that? So that's been incredible to see how the oils interplay into that, yet also just the incredible vision of the owners here to look at really changing the world in a way that is beneficial to people, that people can actually have their own decisions into places that they haven't before because they've been directed into things that they don't quite understand. So giving people more knowledge base, more opportunities, more tools, and to have such pure essential oils, which therapeutic grade essential oils, it's a total game changer. Because if you go into like a Walmart, a lot of times what you're getting is perfume, or you're getting a synthetic makeup of an oil. It's a very different effect on the body than an actual oil, essential oil. And essence means the essence of the botanical. It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that it's essential. And some people laugh and they play off of that word, but it's the essence of the botanical. And so if it's frankincense, that essence, as we know back in scripture, there was a reason that was the oil that was given, right?
It's a precious thing.
Yeah. And so you have these botanicals. We have a botanical that we've been able to source out of the Amazon called, depending on how you want to say it, copaiba or copaiba. People say it both ways. That is an incredible oil, and it's very similar in makeup to CBD, but it doesn't have all of the concerns that CBD has in it. And that's one that I have always at my house because it's very effective oil. So there's different things that do support, help health, and I couldn't live without an On Guard.
One drop at a time.
Yes, that's a one drop. And then the one person at a time is really how, and this does work into a couple of different ways. It works into either the family support system, or if somebody wants to run it as a business model, or however they want to do it. This business structure has freed a lot of people because the product is so good.
How many representatives
so
do you
we
think
have
that
almost 6 million customers. It's between 5 and 6 million customers, and we have about 20% of those that are actually growing it as a business. So that's why, in the hundreds of thousands that are actually growing it. And they're having great success. And whether they make a little bit a month or whether they really are doing, and it's hard work. I mean, if you're going to do this and really get into it for the money, it is a full-time hard work, but it's an awesome product. So it's something that really backs you up in a business structure.
But so close to 1 million families, individuals that have participated in
and really are doing quite well at it. And then the communities, we talked about the co-impact sourcing. When we go into a sourcing community, whether it be Bulgaria for lavender, or whether it be Guatemala or Somaliland or Oman or Kenya, there are a number of these places that we actually have these full co-impact sourcing models. And what that means is we have partners on the ground that we know, that we work with, that we ensure as they grow, we pay on time, we pay fair. We don't inflate a market because that will completely take the economy off of where they are. So, but we will pay very, profitable, fair rates to them. And then because we know them, that takes out those layers of hidden possibilities where you have a lot of trafficked labor throughout the world, which I really saw when I worked with the DOJ and their Blue campaign. And what happens is they call it hidden corporations. And corporations basically layer in sourcing layers where they don't even know they may have a registered individual, and that registered individual is many times a trafficked individual. So, but we know who we're sourcing with. And so you take away those layers where you've got a direct sourcing, and you take away human slavery out of those, and that's incredible. Then on top of that, you're paying them. They're able to, for the first time in their lives, have that self-respect of having an income where they're able to help themselves and their families. And then the most incredible thing also, well, not the most, but part of the incredible structure that we have is we have the Healing Hands Foundation or Healing Hands Initiatives, because in many countries it's not a foundation because of the charitable registration. But that is, we go in with humanitarian resources to these areas. So for instance, one of the areas where we have been, we got there and there was this beautiful school that was built, and we said, why are the kids not in the school? And they said, well, they have to walk and get the water. So you've got a water problem. Okay, well, let's get you wells. And so what our Healing Hands initiatives will do in those areas is go in and help them build the waterways so the kids can get in the schools that another organization has already built. Or we will build schools, or we'll work with Mentors International and actually mentor and do microloaning. We'll work with Choice International and actually go in and do projects with Choice, whether it's building schools. We have a number of health clinics. So millions of dollars around. And then, incredibly, we have an incredible fund that is driven through sales. Through people can either buy the Hope Oil or a rose lotion, and that money specifically goes to projects in and around anti-trafficking measures.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah,
I love just hearing your stories and you know, those ripples that kind of go out from what you've done and the lives that you're helping to change, and you can't do it by yourself,
No.
but obviously making a difference.
Yeah, thank you.